Lee, we're back. We're back. Rugby League Coach episode. Of course, tonight, the first night where we've shared the link out there to the public. If anyone wants to jump on, they are more than welcome to jump on. How do you feel about it?
I think for me, I've been inspired by the amount of people who've been commenting on my Facebook page. I've been going nuts on a few issues, which is what I want, obviously. But some people literally are keyboard warriors, and they like to chuck a lot of theories out without much basis. And I'd love them to come on and challenge us. But most people are really erudite, fair, and good, and articulate in the written word, and I like that, and very fair. But others who just like to attack. So I guess if you're going to attack me to my face, attack you to your face. Let's do it.
Oh, beautiful. We'll find out shortly, won't we? If anyone's going to jump on, and I'd like to hear if there's anyone out there with some opinions, with some articulate discussion to see how it goes. But you never know. So we'll see what happens.
One thing I have found is we put the Zoom link out. I think some people do genuinely fear a little bit Zoom and things like that. It's still quite early in people's lives to have Zoom links and whatnot. I think I found that when I've been doing a few webinars and stuff that people are a bit reluctant to go down the Zoom avenue or the equivalent. I'm not bagging Zoom because I love Zoom and different things. So I'm a Zoom beast.
I just think some people are. You still find it these days in all sorts of meetings, especially online meetings I go into. People don't often activate their camera. There's something about it. They come in and they just listen. They just, people are sometimes, I don't know. I guess they just like to distance themselves from it, which is weird. I guess it lacks human connection. But I guess we'll see if we get some human connection tonight. But
yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if we don't. Because it's not like we've advertised it that heavily, but people will start getting used to it. If you are watching this on record or listening on record, please join us every week. Please join us. Come and have something to say. Instead of hiding behind your keyboard, come and have a go at us.
Or instead, if you just want to listen, if you want some advice, if it's anything it is, doesn't have to be challenging. It can just be, hey, you're on a Wednesday night, you want to see what Lee and Taylor have to say, and you jump in. So anyway, we're not going to sit around and wait all night. We're going to jump straight into it, mate. Tonight is Players Week of the Rugby League Coach podcast. And something I'd like to talk about, I'll bring up, and let's have a little bit of a riff and talk about is the power of the mind, how important the power of the mind is to the modern day rugby league player to springboard onwards. You can go on several rabbit holes down here, whether it go the power of the mind, or if there's a will, there's a way to make it from any position. The power of the mind in individual scenarios with injuries, all sorts of things. But I'd like to talk about the power of the mind, Lee. What do you think about that subject?
I'm a firm believer in it, funnily enough. I could tell plenty of anecdotes, but I guess the most obvious one that jumps to mind straight away is the England cricket team right now. They have gone from whipping boys to literally playing and thinking more positively, to the point where they've played 4 tests already in this English summer against New Zealand and India, the 2 best teams in the cricketing world for test matches anyway. And they've broken records left, right and centre to beat them. Played 4, won 4. And they're all attributing it to positive thinking. So they've got a new captain and a new coach, and they're attributing it to positive thinking. And it can be the only thing that's different. I mean, I was unfortunate enough to be at the Gabba 6 months ago when they played Australia. And if they are thinking positively now, and that is the reason why they are winning, then they must have been thinking really negatively when they were in Australia, because there was just nothing there. There was no spark. Now it almost seems that, I wouldn't say they're unbeatable, but they believe they can chase any score. And they're even to the point now where I believe they're ignoring the pitch a little bit. They're not, when the coin goes up, they'd rather chase a score than set one. They've just completely changed their mentality. And I guess the power of the mind in rugby league is really important. I mean, I think we get too lost sometimes in the X's and O's of the game. Sometimes you've literally just got to run harder than the person who's trying to tackle you. You've got to run to bust. You've got to tackle hard as you possibly can, and you've got to have a mindset that you are going to beat your opponent. I think when you think about rugby league, and especially dealing with kids, I've had a bit of this on some of the clinics in the last 9-10 days. I always tell the kids, don't ever believe that you're not going to make the tackle. Instead, think about how you're going to smash that person in the tackle, within the rules of the game. If you have any doubt, and you know this from your playing days, if you have any doubt at all when somebody a bit bigger than you is running at you, then the chances are that you can fall off that tackle or miss it completely. The other side, if you have zero doubt and you go in with an attack positive mindset, then the chances are you not only will you make the tackle, you will do it very, very well. And I firmly believe that a lot of that is down to mindset. Yes, there's technique. Yes, there's strength and whatnot. But ultimately, big thing is the power of the mind. I think we can look at the power of the mind throughout sport in terms of home and away matches, how some teams are defeated after a long bus trip or a long plane just because they fear the ground that they're at. We're a few days away or a week away from Origin 3 at Suncorp, and already there's this sort of, it's at Suncorp and the stats are against New South Wales and whatnot. Look, they'll only be against New South Wales if they choose for them to be against New South Wales.
Yes.
You can either thrive or die in that environment. And, again, that's mentality. Freddie Hitler obviously lifted the mentality of the Blues going into Origin 2, and it was obviously the mental game. So in terms of players playing, I think the mental game and positive thinking is really important because of the physicality of our game, the physical nature. So if me and you were going to go shirts off and start now, and start having a blue, but there's no room for doubt, is there?
No
room for doubt. You've got to go in. Jurgen Klopp, the old Liverpool manager, the current Liverpool manager, but a few years ago, first thing he said in one of his first press conferences, he said, I want the players to turn from doubter to believer. As if it was a switch that you can just switch on, and guess what? I think it is.
Yeah, well, it definitely is. And it's not just, as you said, coming into a tackle, all that sort of thing. You can be in the tackle and still make those choices of positive or negative.
Yeah.
You could lose the first contact in a tackle, and you could be, get to the ground and you could be sloppy, as you would say, shopping trolley. You just kind of put your hands on it, whatever. Or you could just go, well, I'm going to dive in there and fight for the ball and try wrestling. I can still win this. That's that positive thinking that's going to drive you to do that. Can I still win this tackle from where I'm at? Some people will say, no, I can't. Well, if you say no, you can't, you're no chance because you're not going to try.
I think positive thinking as well. You'll be familiar with this term. I used it with you. Next action. So if you concede a try as a team, you focus on your next action. All my teams use that term. What that means is it doesn't matter what has happened previously. You might be 12-0 down, 18-0 down. It's your next action that matters. On the flip, if you are 18-0 up, 12-0 up, or 6-0 up, your next action matters. And I guess it's about being positive in all circumstances. But yeah, the power of the mind is huge. And I guess on the flip, talking about Origin again, the Queensland mental game is going to be everything going into Origin 3. Absolutely everything. Queenslanders like to talk about the mystique of Origin and that they get Origin and all this. The whole thing that they're talking about is a mentality.
Yeah, that's right.
It's all a mentality. There's stories over the years of people who've been in prison and they've mentally imagined playing the perfect round of golf and they've mentally rehearsed it. And then they've gone out and basically done it, even though they've been in jail for a long time. There's thousands of little stories.
But, the power of the mind, like you said it, you just mentioned, like, Queensland, the power of the mind, they get it a bit better than Origin. If you're talking from a week-to-week basis, right, if you're talking about a side that's just lost by 50 points or whatever Queensland just lost by, now there's two ways you can take that. One way is Queensland could say, we just got 50 points put on us by this side. They're a better side, and that could be playing in their head, and they could get done again. Or if they you think about it the other way, it's like, well, we've just been embarrassed in our maroon jersey, and some people would say they would come out more fired up. But all that comes down to their mentality at the time. It's how they react, and the power of their mentality is going to choose which path they take. But it just depends which way they're looking at things. And you like to hope elite athletes will be looking at it, I've been embarrassed in front of my home, but that it still comes down to the power of the mind and where they're at. Now, for the young player, Lee, power of the mind, another way would be the way they're training. The way they're training as kids, the way they're coming through. A lot of the times people will be like, well, I don't have the opportunity. I'm not in that development side, or I'm not in this program or that program. The power of the mind will push you through. I don't have weights. Oh, but I have a tyre that I can get access to down the road. I'll flip that instead.
Yeah.
The power of the mind is what's going to drive those young players to make it, if they're going to make it, or to be their best, to be the best versions of themselves.
I firmly believe that is the main difference between the good and the great, or the okay and the good, is the mentality. Going back again to the origin scenario, but let's also be thinking about the young player when we do that. A young player may dwell on the fact that there's a 50-point defeat. I know, for one thing, when I played as a kid, I tried not to think about the result, because I was playing in a team at one point that were getting flogged most weeks. Yeah. So instead, I just focused on my game, my processes. That was my way of dealing with it. Of course, I wanted to win, and of course, I wanted to enjoy wins with my team. But it came very clear at one point that we weren't going to in one season. We're probably in a division too high for us with the players that we had. So instead, I focused on my processes. And if you focus on process rather than outcome, you tend to eventually work out that you're at the right outcome in the end anyway. Going back to Origin and that scenario, I guess I think the players are there in the first place at the NRL, Super League, Origin, Internationals, because they literally just deal with those kind of things quite well, or very well. It's only the real poor teams that really struggle with it and go from one extreme to another. I guess you can't tell me that what Mick Potter has done at the Dogs since he took over from Trent Barrett. Yes, he might have changed the odd thing tactically. They might be a bit more expansive, but again, it's a mentality thing to be a bit more expansive with the ball. So wherever you go, whatever you think, it always comes back to the mind. And I guess if I had a white coat on and was calling myself a psychologist, people probably wouldn't listen to this podcast. But I'm a coach. I firmly believe in the power of the mind. Personally, I love taking the underdogs. I like the fight of the underdog, because they have something to prove. So, I'm on a sabbatical from coaching now, as you know. To that end, I can choose my next job and choose it carefully and wisely, and for there to be mutual love and respect between organisation and coach and whatnot going in the same direction. And I guess I am telling you now that a big feature of it will have to be the underdog mentality. They've got to go somewhere, and I know that fits my personality a lot better too. So, everything, mate, relates to mentality. Absolutely everything. You've spoken on this podcast a couple of times about the year you had with me where it didn't work out for you, and then the year where you blossomed. And, mate, the only turnaround was in your head.
Yes.
The only turnaround was in your head. Of course, it came with maturity, but it's not like you put any massive amount of extra weight on muscularity. It was your mindset that made you go out and train more, a bit more cardio, a mindset that you weren't going to be beaten in 2011. And I think that's, again, that's something that carried you through. So, yeah, to wrap that up, mate, it literally is everything. It's your mind that gets you out of bed every day. It's your mind that stops you making bad choices. It's your mind or your lack of discipline around your mind that makes you make those poor choices. So, yeah, the power of positive thinking and the right thinking is huge.
It is huge. And look, we'll move on. I think we got a good few little chestnuts out of there for our young players watching, or for any players watching and listening to this podcast. Just around the power of positivity in the mind and all that sort of thing. So, if you are listening, that's something. And if you're a coach listening, that's something that is massive to instill in your players. Now, I don't know if I told you, Lee. I think I have. I think I mentioned it on this podcast. A couple of weeks ago, I attended my first level 1 coaching accreditation course, which had nothing to do with trying to be you. I promise. I'm not trying to emulate you. I promise. I had to do it to coach my son's side. And the NRL guy that was there that was giving out the course, he said, I want to talk to you. I want you all to go back and tell me what's the biggest thing that is affecting our kids and their development in rugby league. And I put my hand up straight away. And he said, what? Like, how did you know straight away? I said, mate, it's the rain. We haven't had
Lorraine.
The rain.
Oh, the rain.
I don't know who Lorraine is, but maybe Lorraine's affecting as well.
I can see Deirdre now. Lorraine has gone.
Lorraine. Oh, we should.
I can see Deirdre now. Lorraine has gone.
Well, it hasn't gone. It hasn't gone in New South Wales. It hasn't gone in South East Queensland. Only last Friday we had another game cancelled due to the rain.
I've had to postpone my Logan clinic today. So today, as we speak, I should be halfway through a 2-day clinic in Logan. And obviously, everyone is devastated. I walked on the field today and I had to clean my shoes when I got home, and because it's still so wet. And I guess, mate, we are having that El Nino in Australia, that El Nino or El Nino, whatever it's called. But I guess kids, why are you smirking?
Because it's so funny that a Channel 7 reporter says it's El Nino 6 months ago, and then it's the people. Yeah. Every time you look outside, it's just an Aussie thing. You look outside and you go, oh, a bit of water about. Someone else goes, yeah, it's that bloody El Nino, mate.
El Nino. And El Dorado. And
next it'll be the La Nina.
Yeah, one of them. Now,
it's hot out. Oh, it's the La Nina, mate. Anyway, sorry.
All right, look, let's not make light of this. This is something I'm really passionate about.
Yeah.
And we're not going to get any academic reports on this, on the effects of sporting prowess. But let me tell you my anecdotal evidence. Basically, in the last 2.5 years, kids have missed out on shitloads. So if it wasn't lockdowns, it was isolation periods for a couple of years with the old coronavirus. So in Brisbane, where we are, they even copped it. But it's nothing compared to Sydney, Melbourne, England, and so many other places. The New Zealand Prime Minister seems to like to shut things down when somebody coughs as well. So everyone's been affected somehow.
Yes.
Statistics alone in Brisbane, and I did have these up to date about 8 months ago, and they just kept getting worse and worse. They've missed something crazy like 10 weeks of school in the last 2.5 years.
Yeah.
They've missed something crazy between 20 and 50 games of rugby league in the last couple of years. Plus 2 or 3 hours of training leading up to some of those games.
Yeah.
Be it through COVID, lockdown, isolation, rain, or floods. Through my clinics, the Aim Higher program, I have been all around Brisbane. I've been up to Bundaberg. I've been to Sydney. I've been to 2 venues in Melbourne, and I've been to the UK. And what I have seen since the start of 2021 and then 2022, and this is anecdotal, in Brisbane, I've seen a little drop in terms of core skill, knowledge, and just because you know something doesn't mean you can do it. So knowledge and ability to do. So core skill practice, repetition. Core skills of grip, pass, catch, carry, tackle technique, right? Things like that. Not only that, I've also noticed it being worked on the non-dominant side. So they might be okay from the right side, but they worked on the left. In Brisbane, there was also a noticeable difference, maybe 10 or 20% at the start of the year, on how the kids lacked some fitness. They lacked structure, so asking kids to get in fours or something like that, they just struggled with that. Moving through, sort of like the further south I went in Australia, so Sydney and Melbourne, the athletic differences were quite palatable at first look. And I'm talking about things like, I'm not saying weight or anything like that, but just kids planting the foot on the ground when they run, the way they do it. In England, it was twice as bad in the clinic at it. Now, this body of evidence I'm delivering now will not stand up to academic or scientific scrutiny.
Yeah.
But it doesn't take a genius to work out that they've done less, so they're going to not be as good at it over the last 2.5 years. Not only that, they've missed out on so many societal things.
Yeah.
So we're doing a podcast like this because during the COVID times, the software that we're using now became more commonplace.
Yes.
Most of us stream now rather than satellite or whatever. Our life changed. Kids spent more time on devices, on phones, on laptops and whatnot. They spent less time with each other, which means they're building less team skills, less social skills. The big impact I've seen around the world I was in up until last September, October, was kids who'd been picked for their region couldn't progress to the state level because the tournament didn't happen. Right? And then the year after, they played for the region, got picked for the state team, but the state competition didn't happen, the national competition. So there's 2 years there of kids that have grown up through school, one day dreamt of playing for Queensland schoolboys, Queensland schoolgirls, and never achieved it. Now, the national schoolboy competition in Australia, for the last 2 years, it hasn't gone national. For a big chunk of that, New South Wales couldn't administer it because of COVID. So even not looking at the athletic development of a kid, just the spiritual development of a kid and missing out on some of those opportunities. If I was to take away from you your St. Greg's years in rugby league in 11 and 12, how much of a gap in your life would it be?
It'd be massive. It would be, I don't think, I think it's hard to measure. If those 2 years were 2010, 2011 for me, I think it would be immeasurable to say the difference in my life to that. It would be immeasurable. Because the chance for me to dig my heels deep and then turn, do what I need to do to get to where I got to, wouldn't have been possible because I wouldn't have had any football field to go and run out and show it.
And then, you ended up making a few quantum leaps in your career. Well, what about the good times that you had with other people? What about the social and emotional development you undertook during that time?
Yeah.
Imagine you had to do all your lessons at home via Zoom with your teacher.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And not seeing your classmates, only seeing them on Zoom for 6 months.
You saw me in year 11 and 12, and I wasn't doing too much schoolwork. I was doing more socialising than that.
In year 11, I wouldn't mind limiting you to Zoom calls. At least I could mute you.
The social interactions, I credit my year 11 and 12 more so than any of the other years of my schooling because I was a boarder at St. Greg's. So I learned to live in a house with other blokes. I learned to all those sorts of things. That was massive in my development into an adult.
And what we've not mentioned is the most obvious one, and this is the reason I've left it to last. And I'm good at doing this. It's what I do. I like to loot. It's the routine. It's the routine. It's the routine of turning up to training every week.
Yeah.
Tuesday, Thursday, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It's the routine that these kids have missed out on. And when you miss out on routine, you find distractions. So this has undoubtedly been a huge impact on our kids. We're going to see the impact, right? We're going to see the impact in the quality of football in the next couple of years, in our under-18s and our under-20s in the next few years. There's going to be a bit of a drop. You're going to find coaches are going to talk about how they're filling bigger gaps in their skill base. You're going to find that the kids find pre-seasons tougher because they did that little bit less. And I don't think people understand this as well as they should. Everything's incremental. So if there's 40 maths classes in a year and you only end up in 10 of them, you're not going to be as good at maths as the person with an equal brain power to you who's been to all 40 classes. You're certainly not going to be as good enough as the one who's got the equal brain power to you, been in all 40 classes and done extra study on top. And rugby league and sport is incremental like that too. It's not something you can fast track. yes, there are a few hacks that can make you get a bit better quicker at something. That's called coaching and good advice and discipline. But ultimately, taking all that stuff away for so long is going to take at least the same amount going back. At least. So if you've had 4 weeks off the gym, you probably need 8 weeks to get back to where you were 4 weeks ago, kind of thing. Like that's so it is a huge thing, and we're only in the infancy of working out what it's done. And if you're on the eastern seaboard of Australia, which many of our listeners and viewers are, you need to be aware of this with your kids. And I guess coaches out there, my plea to you is to use as many games as possible, bilateral learning to both sides of the body, left and right brain. I always say to kids and coaches, try brushing your teeth with a left hand, right-handed tonight and see how good you go. And that's how important training both sides of the brain are, because both sides of the body are, because you probably use your dominant hand every night, every morning and night, twice a day to brush your teeth, and that's why you can do it with one hand and not the other. So, look, mate, to summarise that, really big issue. We'll never know. We'll never read an academic paper. We'll never see a paragraph in a newspaper or a headline on TV saying our sports stars are 40% worse because of COVID and because of flood. You're not going to see that because it's not as important as some other things in life. And I guess there's too much rubbish in the news anyway. But I know that the studies that have come out in England about the impact on kids' literacy as young as 6 and 5 because of COVID times. You can't blame the weather over there because it's shit weather all the time anyway. So,
yeah, well, I think one thing that is quite concerning that's happened through COVID, and I guess I have been openly critical of, I guess, the Brisbane Rugby League in this way, is that I think COVID has given people the ability to be comfortable in shutting things down. When I was a kid, I felt like we played in rain, sunshine and hail. I felt like if it snowed, they'd still throw us out there. And we loved it. They're the games we love. Yeah. I just feel like to a level now, because they've had to shut things down through COVID, they are more inclined to continue to do so. And the kids are missing a lot of football because of it.
It's also dependent on the local councils and also the people running each venue. I mean,
it's not completely the Brisbane Rugby League's fault.
Yeah. I was at Sanford yesterday, and it was raining cats and dogs, and the president texted, "No game this weekend. Crack on, get on there." And we didn't do it that much damage. There would be other people that would just jump straight on it and say, "No, we can't proceed." The Slats Creek committee today, they were looking at ways we could do it. Sort of 30 or 40 metres of the field were dryish, but we just couldn't secure the quality of the clinic on that. We had to make a decision on it, and at the other end was like a swamp. There'd be other places that just wouldn't even consider letting even be thought about, and that's just the nature of it. Mate, you've got your own kids. I mean, do you feel like they've lacked anything? Or?
Yeah, I do feel like in general the under sixes I work with, maybe it's just my memory, are probably a little less skilled with hand-eye coordination, catching the ball, listening to instruction for every drill.
Because you're their father. Listening to instruction, definitely.
Listen to instruction, definitely.
Yeah.
I do feel like my 5-year-old, definitely. And one thing that I've done in his football side is on game day, they only have to do one pass, dummy half to a runner, and the runner goes. I've implemented a first receiver. Now, they don't have to have that first receiver by the rules of rugby league in Brisbane, but I've basically said to the opposite coaches, do you mind if I throw the extra pass in and you hold your place for a little while? Most have said yes. Some have said no. I respect that.
Yeah.
But in essence, the kids that I'm coaching are doing twice as much passing as they should be.
Yeah,
because I'm forcing the extra pass. Now, will that make a difference? I don't know. I like to think maybe it will. but it's just one thing I've noticed is that their catch pass isn't that great. So I've implemented something to hope that they increase their catch pass skill.
There was differences in the NRL in 2020 and 2021 because they weren't training as much or training differently. Sort of like the injuries have always been quite bad, but they got even worse during that time because the players weren't conditioned in the same way. The 2021, I remember doing an interview with a journalist in England about the UK Super League coming out of their lockdown. Maybe it was 2020. And it was all about the kind of training that you do, being in lockdown, being in semi-lockdown, because Australia had sort of come out of that first. I remember that my school year, that year, we had training sessions where they had stuff to do at home for a while, which Afternoon didn't do. And then you were training in 4 quarters on the field because you only allowed 10 in a pod. So,
yep.
It's affected the top levels just as much as it's affected 2022. What I want the viewer and the listener to be aware of is that I actually think that the game is a bit more intense in terms of they're actually crashing into each other with bigger and stronger bodies, and therefore it causes more injury. Because for the first time in a long time, they had a proper off-season because there was no internationals. So these things do impact the top level as well. On the note of the top level, mate, I do think we delay our podcast next week to Thursday night record.
Yeah, well,
3.
Well, I am going to be at State of Origin. So unless you want one of the most interesting podcasts ever to air.
Knowing you, you won't get your phone going. So, we'll do it Thursday. We'll do it Thursday because then we're more likely to get people on then to comment. And because nobody's joined us tonight, and I guess I don't see that as a failure of anything that we've done. It's a new concept. I don't know many podcasts that just quite open to the whole wide world.
I don't know. I know zero. I know zero podcasts that open to the whole wide world. And I think that'll be, once people latch on, it'll get interesting. But to be fair, as you said at the start, it's not like we've overly advertised it. We've just said, hey, this is what we're doing. And if you are listening, I'll take this as, look, guys, you guys are killing it. It's the best podcast I've ever listened to. I don't need to come on and debate because
that's right. Why spoil it? Yeah.
Everything you say is just 100% factual. You guys are just all over it. So that's my take from it, Lee. But listen, you mentioned you are doing some clinics at the moment. There are some rained out. What have you got planned for the rest of the week?
So Friday, Ipswich, Carol Lee. The irony of this, mate, is in the last few weeks I've been in Melbourne twice, Bundaberg, Jimboomba, Samford on the north side, which is a good hour from me. The minute I come to the ones closest to my house, they're under rain threat. So that is the irony. I went to England and even that didn't get rained off. You know what I mean? So yeah, Ipswich on Friday just for a one-dayer. And then Sydney next week. So obviously we're keeping an eye on the Sydney weather. Supposed to be in Doonside on Monday and Tuesday. So we're having a look at that and giving ourselves as long as we can. We got it out. I was looking at some of the footage today from Windsor.
Yeah.
Some people have been flooded like 4 times this year.
Yeah, mate. Mate, near where I grew up in Bankstown, there's a place called Milperra.
Quite well.
They're well underwater, Milperra.
That's where I stay when I'm close.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Home of the Milperra Colts.
Correct. Barry Ward's the president there or something, isn't he?
Yeah. Mate, if you ever go down to Kalara Park, we're the home of the Colts. Mate, if you just put your ear close enough to the ground, I reckon it'd tell you a few stories about me stomping around in that park.
Mate, I reckon you might hear a few stories about one of my mates in the mill.
The Mill Hotel. Oh, yeah.
But yeah, going back to the floods, lad, I went to Carol Lee earlier in the year to help them with their flood relief. Not their flood relief, their flood cleanup. And driving into the ground, going past the houses around there and seeing some of the damage at the club, it's not often I'm speechless. It was quite... made you feel melancholy. And the strange feeling is you couldn't be angry with anyone.
Mm.
So if it's lockdown, you could blame the government, you could be angry with the government, you know. If somebody's crashed a car into your car, you can be angry with that driver. Mother Nature. And you know, all the things that people have to throw out the front of their houses. And imagine a 40-foot container.
Yeah. Full
of gear.
Full.
Blown across the length of 2 football pitches. Tipped upside down and sideways. That's what Mother Nature did at Caroline.
Yeah.
And, you know, coffee machines, you know, the proper barista things, 30, 40 grams worth. No, not working. Stereo. Just,
yeah.
Oh, mate. It was. To think that some people in some parts of the Eastern Seaboard are going through this all again. Their homes. It was even just talking about it now just brings sadness to the podcast, because it's I just think people are going through that again. There's a road in Ballamble. One of the clay venues I've been at is Ballamble, and in the last couple of weeks we couldn't take the normal road because it had broken.
Yeah.
And I was getting my hair cut down there the other day near Tweed by the butcher of Ballamble, and he was saying that his business has probably been affected because of that road.
Yeah,
still not working. You know, like wherever you turn,
mate. It's crazy, mate. In the past 3 to 4 years, my cousin in Lismore has been flooded twice, and I've got another cousin lives out the back of Picton, and his house burnt down as he was fighting fires in another part of the fire. And it's, you know, they're just 2 situations where you can't blame anyone. 3 couple of situations, you can't blame anyone. You're just incredibly sad. And everyone knows someone in those areas, and it's very sad. It's very sad that we live in these times, and it's still happening. So
we'll do an Origin special next week, lad.
Thursday night Origin special. I'll tell you what.
Oh no, I'm not asking you a tip, but what do you think is going to happen,
mate? My Wednesday night is going to be that big. I reckon I'll still be drinking Gatorades by the time we film on Thursday night. There you go.
Okay.
I reckon it's going to be a blue-white wash. I reckon they're going to put 12 plus points on Queensland.
I'm not just saying this because I've got a Manchester City calendar behind me and I've got a blue light shining in my face from this microphone. But I don't think Blue care that it's sunk up. I think that's just a media thing.
It always has been a media thing. It always has been a media thing.
You got to remember as well, everybody in the NRL played most of the games at Suncorp last year. It's like a home ground to them now.
Mate, there's that many Blues fans living up in Brisbane. I felt like half of Sydney moved up during COVID.
That's right.
I can't walk down the street in Redcliffe without knowing someone from Sydney. It's ridiculous. I might have to move further north. I might have to move to Cairns. All right, mate. Well, I'll let you go. I'll let you get out of here. Thanks, everyone, for listening. And we'll be back next week. Origin special on Thursday night. Lee will, again, we'll post the link. We'll give people the opportunity to come in, laugh at us if the Maroons win, or mourn in front of us while we laugh if the Blues win.
Why are you putting me in the Blues category?
Because you just said you think the Blues will win.
Oh, yeah. But I'm not a supporter of such. I don't support either of them, really.
Yeah, rugby league's a real winner for you, isn't it?
I changed my mind. I changed my mind both games and both years, really.
I think that my theory on football, especially at that level, is that once you get to a stage where you understand a little bit more about how they're playing, what you're watching, you don't get as upset when you lose, because you kind of see how it's happened. You go, well,
it is what it is. I'm a bit like that with Man City. Like, my dad will be like, I said, no, Dad, it's just one of them things. They're not feeling it this week. They've had a big week. Chill out.
Yeah, you can. It's almost like you can chronologically see it all properly and go, well, that led to that, led to that.
Power of the mind.
So, power of the mind. All right, mate. You get to bed, get some beauty sleep, and we'll.
My night's just started, Taylor.
Why? What have you got tonight?
Oh, mate. Well, I've just got maybe in the back of my mind. Boris Johnson could be at the end of his tether. I'm still not watching RL360 yet, so.
Yes. Well, I'm going to be filming a Queensland League scene with John Devine after this. So
tonight.
Jeez.
No wonder you're in a rush.
I'm not in a rush. I'm fine.
All right, lad.
All day. All right, mate. I'll see you next Thursday. But we also have Queensland League 10 analysis earlier in the week, so we'll just keep on keeping on hanging out.
Toodle pip.
See you, mate.